So let's go ahead and dive into the hardware. So both designs look awesome on here. You have a camera ring around the A56, but that's essentially the one difference here. The A56 is also a lot more squared off on the sides as opposed to the S23 Plus. It's a little bit more curved. And also you do have IP68 on the S23 and you have IP67, so you do have a better water resistant rating. And there's some other minor differences, like you have a matte finish versus the glossy finish. This glossy finish never picks up fingerprints on this color, so I think they did a really good job. With, I wonder if it has some type of coating or it just might be the color. But yeah, as far as hardware goes, the A56 is also a lot bigger as well too. So, well, it's not a lot bigger, but it is a little bit bigger than the S23 Plus. Alright, so as far as the displays go, you have a newer panel on the S23 Plus. It uses the dynamic AMOLED display instead of the older Super AMOLED display you'll find on the A56 here. Now, you have a 6.6 inch display on the S23 Plus. It is 120 Hz HDR10 Plus, 1750 nits peak brightness, 1080p 393 for the PPI. One thing you will notice that is kind of apparent here is that you have slimmer bezels on the S23 Plus here. So it is a much nicer looking, display. It just looks more aesthetically, pleasing. Now, the A56 does not have a bad display at all. It does have the Super AMOLED 120 Hz HDR10 Plus. It actually is a little bit brighter outdoors than the S23 Plus, not really by much, but just a little bit. It's 1900 nits peak brightness. It's a 6.7 inch panel, so a little bit bigger, and then it's also 1080p 385 for the PPI. The colors look a lot more vibrant on the dynamic AMOLED display. That's the one thing I do notice. It just has a much more punchy color profile. I'm pretty sure you can kind of get the color profile to look similar in the settings. And let me go ahead and check it out, because it does look like a little bit dull. I might have it turned up already. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, I do have it turned up, but it still kind of looks a little bit like dull. So if you like that kind of like more vivid look, it's just not gonna look like that on the A56. There is definitely a difference in software, guys, and the overall speed here. So the software situation is pretty interesting here. So the benefit of an A56 is that you have 6 years of major OS updates on this phone, starting from, of course, Android 15. It has the Exynos 1580, 128 gigs of internal storage. This version is 8 gigs of RAM. There is a base 6 gig. And yeah, so as you can see the score difference here, you have on the S23 Plus, you have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor on here. This only gets 4 years of major OS updates, and that started with Android 13. Now, you do have, again, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, 256 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigs of RAM on this base model here. You can see the score difference is definitely better. And then if we also go into our 3D Mark scores, you can see that you also get much better 3D Mark scores. So if you're a power user or a gamer, you really want to be geared towards the S23 Plus. If you're somebody that enjoys, just having the latest software updates and you just want the latest software, right? Then the A56 is going to be better for you. Now, the software is a bit limited on the A56. So what I mean by this is if we go into our settings here, we have actually the full Galaxy AI. It's not, all of the features that would be on like an S25. It is missing a few things. But essentially you have all the important stuff. On the A56, you don't have Galaxy AI. You have intelligent features. It's a very stripped back version, and it gives you just a few things that you guys can see here, like things like object eraser and best face, auto trim, AI select, stuff that you may or may not use, but you have much better stuff like the live interpretations, call assist, note assist, a lot more cooler things. So yeah, it just depends, right? Both of these are running Android 15, One UI 7, and they both have your circle to search, and they both actually have your updated Gemini as well too. So when you press the power button, you get the smarter, newer Gemini. And is also one thing that you will be missing if you get an A56 is that is going to be Samsung DeX. So Samsung desktop support is here, and of course that's not here on the A56 here. This allows you to, you know, beam your phone to the computer, have a little desktop. Basically, if you have an external monitor, you can low-key, you know, kind of turn it into a little computer, which I might do a video on that. But as far as your general performance here, I'm going to say the A56 is actually pretty smooth. I think it's kind of on par with general performance with the S23. Of course, it is going to be a little bit behind in terms of just getting into stuff, but it's really not by much. Animations are really smooth. So when it comes to the overall speed of, you know, these two phones here, I think they're pretty well evenly matched for just daily normal use, right? Like I said, power heavy users, you're going to go with an S23 Plus, but as you guys can see, the A56 is keeping up. It's not lagging. We're not having stuttery animations and stuff like that, even though it is a mid-range phone. So that is one reason why I actually really like this phone. It's not you know, laggy and kind of jerky all over the place. Will it stay that way in a few more years? I think so. I think the processor is pretty strong enough. But as you guys can see, it's pretty smooth. So I don't have any complaints. I think it's just when I got this phone, I said it's just as smooth as a flagship. It's pretty smooth. So when it comes to gaming performance, like we saw with our 3D Mark and also our Geekbench, we're gonna get better performance. PUBG at 120 frames. Like I said, more competitive gamers, people who play a lot of games, emulators, it's gonna run a lot better on the S23 Plus. So I highly recommend that. You know, if you know, are playing in a lot of games, you really don't want to go with the S23, I mean not the S23, but the A56. It's not as well optimized. This should at least do 90 frames, but you know, it's a budget phone, so they're not going to optimize it, in my opinion. But yeah, it plays PUBG really smooth at 60 frames. So I would say this is geared towards more of a casual gamer. You can come in here easily, knock a few games of PUBG, Call of Duty out. Genshin runs, you know, pretty decent on here as well. Emulators even run, you know, fine on the A56. It's really not bad, but if you're more on the competitive side, I would, you know, get the S23 Plus. Let's check out these speakers at max volume. So, you know, and this is a word that I hate to use, but compared to the S23 Plus, the A56 speakers, they sound like decent, right? They don't sound bad, but they kind of sound a little cheap compared to the S23 Plus. S23 Plus has a much more like crisper and clearer sound. Yeah, so that's the best way I can describe it. But when I say cheap, it kind of makes it sound like the A53 speakers are not good. But I mean, they're not bad at all for a mid-range phone. They don't sound as clean. You also do have a fingerprint scanner, which I actually like this one. The optical fingerprint scanner, it works fine. Like, is it like slower than the ultrasonic? Of course. But you know, it doesn't feel like super slow. Like the A36 has a really slow optical fingerprint scanner. Like, you notice it for sure. The difference is very slight. With the ultrasonic ones, you can just kind of tap these and they go in. But if you try to like tap the, you know, it's not gonna register. You can also use face unlock on both of these, of course. All right, so the big question is image quality, which I think is definitely a big reason. Are you getting significantly better video and image quality with an A56 here? So the S23 Plus here, it does have a triple camera setup, 50 megapixel standard, 10 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 8K 24 and 30 with a 12 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. You have a 50 megapixel standard on the A56, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro camera, and then you also have 4K 30, 12 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 30 What you will also notice here is that the zoom is, a lot less on the A56 at 10 times versus 30. Lastly, I'm going to say battery life is very good on both of these phones, guys. I do not have bad battery life at all on the S23 Plus. It's actually very good, even though it does have a slightly smaller battery than the A56 here. You have a 4700 milliamp 45 watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging. The A56 has a 5000 milliamp battery, 45 watt charging, no wireless and reverse wireless charging. So again, you're gonna lose that kind of like premium feature as well. So again, me personally, I prefer the S23 Plus. I think it's a clear winner. But the only downside is that this has the 6 years of majorOS updates. You can get it for brand new as opposed to buying it in the used refurbished marketplace. And also, I think it would be even better if Samsung didn't take away the SD card support. This would be even rougher choice for people to make, right? So what do you guys think?